They filed into the sunlit meeting room with their papers, glasses, and the easy authority of people used to saying no. The room at the top of the arts building looked over Lisbon's red roofs and the river beyond. It was early summer, already hot by 10 in the morning. I sat with my proposal, 15 pages, double-spaced, carefully footnoted, storyboarded, and hopelessly naive. Somewhere below, students were hurrying to exams or finding shaded benches. I could hear Swift's shrieking in calls out the open window, alive and urgent, so alien to the slow quiet of this review. The academic committee sat before me, 3 men and 2 women. Most of them wore expressions smoothed by repetition. I saw that Professor Carvalho's hands, well manicured and motionless, pressed the cover page. So, he sighed before he started reading, a feature-length documentary by a third-year student on neighborhood fado singers, and you want full creative supervision. His brow, dark and skeptical, didn't lift. I tried to match his calm, suppressing the erratic, racing flight of my thoughts. Keep your voice even, don't fidget, listen, nod, breathe. There was an audience and I had credit to lose. Their questions pecked apart every premise. Too ambitious, too amateur, too many risks, no obvious market. What did I know about editing, about grants, budgets, collaborating, about any of it? When I tried to answer, they barely let me finish. By the end, they thanked me with professional politeness so slight it almost felt cruel. I collected my folder and left before any last, embarrassing outburst could spring up in me. In the corridor, I steadied myself with a slow inhale. Around the corner, students chatted about weekend plans, oblivious. Sunlight knifed through open doors, and the city's salt tang drifted up from the river. Still, my cheeks burned with defeat. I walked out past the tiled walls, down the university steps, and through the heat, back up the narrow Alfama streets where my family had lived for 40 years. At home, my older brother looked up from his newspaper, eyes quick and satisfied. They went as expected. I dropped my bag in the hall. They rejected it. He laughed, just a short, dismissive sound. Of course. Your head is always full of impossible things. Our mother, folding shirts in the kitchen, only shook her head. You should study something real, Philho. Every month you talk about films, stories, faces we don't know, and for what? You need work, you need a future. She never understood the silence I carried. For her, ambition was always practical, a job in the city, reliable hours, a steady income. Cinema for her was a nightly distraction, beautiful, yes, but always someone else's life. I changed the subject, forcing a smile and asking if she needed groceries. For years, she bought cheap fish at the Mercado de Ribeira, always searching for the best price. I envied the clarity of her mission, her faith that life's rewards could be bargained for step by careful step. That night, I barely slept. I lay awake in my small room, sketchbooks and story drafts piled around me. The ceiling above me was cracked and a little stained. I watched shifting shadows while the city cooled outside. Around 3, I let the tears come, silent so that no one would hear. When I finally slept, I dreamed not of applause but of empty theaters, my film reels unwinding into dust. Lisbon stayed bright that summer, river glinting blue in the distance. I didn't give up the script. I filmed on my old Nikon, begged friends for sound gear, haunted pawn shops for lenses. I carried my camera through Alfama's smoky bars, along tiled staircases, and behind the yellow trams rolling over cobbles. My grandmother's neighbor, Dona Madina, let me record her singing fado in her faded kitchen, a cigarette trembling in her thin hand. The sounds, laughter and sadness lived in every cracked wall. My brother ridiculed me at dinner. Are you getting paid yet? The grocery shop needs help, real help. I endured the taunts, letting the silence settle between us. Some nights frustration boiled through me, but I learned to swallow it. Friends from university drifted away, moving into advertising and finance, settling for safe paths. I took odd jobs. Waiter in the Bairro Alto, dog walker on Sundays, sometimes kitchen help at a cousin's cafe. Every free minute went to the script, to borrowed gear, to stolen moments of possibility. Hardly anyone cared. Most thought I'd waste a decade on dreams. A few whispered that I was too proud to grow up. There were times I questioned everything, the point of the stories, the worth of my vision. One winter night after my shift washing dishes, I watched the old men at the Miradero de Senhora do Monte, standing silent against the wind, eyes fixed on the city lights. I envied that stillness, the absence of longing. But resolve was a quiet, stubborn animal in me. I couldn't name it. I just kept picking up the camera again and again. Nearly 7 years passed. The city changed in small ways. New cafes, bright murals by the docks, more tourists with selfie sticks on the trams. My brother married, moved away. My mother's hair turned more silver than black. I still worked odd jobs, and still at night I cut and recut footage in my cluttered apartment. I suffered breakdowns and months where I could barely pay rent. I submitted short films to contests and usually got no reply. At 26, drifting behind deadlines and sometimes desperate for work, it was easy to imagine everyone had been right. What pulled me through was smaller than pride and deeper than hope, something like defiance that lived below words. One late August, I got word that a documentary festival in Porto, across the country, had accepted my feature. Not just accepted, the programmer's email, flat and official, said it was shortlisted for their Emerging Voices Award. I read the email twice, once with disbelief, once with terror. And in that empty kitchen, I shouted, really shouted, just to hear something bounce off the walls that felt like victory. At the festival, surrounded by strangers and bright lights, my little film, the one about the old singers, the shaky footage with its imperfect audio, all those memories, lit up a screen in a real theatre. When the credits rolled, nobody booed. In fact, people clapped. Some lingered to talk afterward. A young woman with camera earrings told me my grandmother's neighbor sang with ghosts inside her throat. The programmers shook my hand and called it authentic, heartbreakingly so. For days after, I kept waiting for someone to tell me there had been a mistake. When the award was announced, I didn't cry. I stood on stage, accepted the plaque with two hands, and remembered every night I'd spent alone in my rented flat, everything I'd heard from my family, every ugly, small moment of doubt. For the first time, I could admit, not just to others but to myself, that I was made for stories. Shortly after, a small production company in Barcelona picked up the international rights. They sent me a contract with figures my brother would have called serious money. I signed shaky-handed, then bought a bus ticket home. It felt surreal arriving back in Lisbon with two battered suitcases, the prize packed between my jeans, and full rights to the film credited under my name. The city shimmered with early summer heat, lime trees, sun-bleached azulejos, laundry fluttering overhead. My mother answered the door, opening it wide as if she didn't recognize me. She blinked, hand to her cheek. "Philho, what are you doing here?" "I live here," I joked, embarrassed at the lump in my throat. She let me in and squeezed me, smelling like soap and onions. My old room was untouched, just dustier and overrun with old photos. That night, family gathered in the kitchen for dinner. My aunt from Bexar, my brother and his new wife, two cousins with their small children. The air was thick with sardines and the sweet, heady scent of fresh bread. For a while the conversation rolled along as always: football results, what the neighbors spent on groceries, how expensive electricity had become. Eventually my aunt poked me with a fork. "So, what are you doing now, Antonio? Any new jobs?" My brother grinned, lacing sarcasm through his voice. "He's still filming singers in basements, I suppose." I met his gaze head-on. "Actually, my film won an award in Porto, and a Spanish company's distributing it. I want to invite everyone to the screening next week at Cinema São Jorge." There was a moment, just half a breath of complete silence. No plates clinked, no laughter. My cousin's little girl frowned, chewing on her thumb. "An award. For what?" My brother's skepticism hardened his jaw. I gave him the ticket. He read the printed words, lips moving without sound, before passing it to my mother. She set her hand lightly at her throat as if hiding surprise. All my life I'd wanted some grand monologue, but standing in that kitchen I found all the fight burned out of me. It wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. I just needed them to see what I had seen, to feel what I had felt through all those lonely, endless nights. The following Friday afternoon, I waited outside Cinema São Jorge, clutching tickets. The air was sticky with pollen and the city shimmered, golden on the avenue. I kept expecting no one to show, but eventually my mother appeared in her second-best dress. My brother looked restive, suit too tight for the heat, eyes darting toward his phone. A few of my father's old friends, graying and formal, joined us with stiff handshakes. Inside, the theatre was almost full, locals, some critics, a few university faces. My family huddled in one row, uncertain, whispering. The seats creaked, the curtain drew back. My name appeared on the screen, lasting longer than I ever thought possible. Then the opening shot, the old fado singers, Dona Madalna's wrinkled fingers trembling over the guitar, her voice raw and defiant against the city's darkness. In the crowd, I could feel people leaning forward, hushed. The film unfolded without apology: old wounds, missing daughters, the memory of revolution woven through folk songs and plastic tablecloths. The theatre's silence settled, vast and total. At the scene where Madonna's husband joins her, eyes gleaming with pride, my own mother stifled a sob. I kept my eyes on the screen, not daring to breathe. The final credits rolled. One by one, the audience stood, clapping hard and long. Some whistled. In the second row, Professor Carvalho, white-haired, thinner now, looked at me, not with condescension but with something more like regret or perhaps respect. I met his eyes, and for a moment all the bitterness washed away. Outside, the crowd gathered around me, reporters angled for quotes. "How did it start? How did you know?" I told them I didn't. There had only been a stubborn, private silence, a refusal to let go. That was all. My mother clutched my hand. My brother hugged me hard, back-patting awkwardness covering the years of dismissal. "I was wrong," he whispered as if ashamed. It was all I ever needed. Someone in the crowd started a song, one from the film. A rough, beautiful chorus swelled up. My old neighbors laughed, an aunt teared up. The theater spilled into the street, swept by the steady, tidal resolve that had carried me all those years. We walked down Avenida de Libertad, city lights alive overhead, and for the first time I felt my footsteps finding solid ground. Later that week, papers ran my picture, "Local boys make good." Old dreams realized. The compliments came, then faded. Yet what stayed was smaller things. My mother singing as she dusted, friends showing up with fresh stories, a sense that maybe I had changed something invisible but real, a little more hope, a little more room between old walls. Some evenings I stood at the same Miradoro above the city, watching the last colors flatten against the sky. Trams rumbled below. In the hush, I knew that my journey's real return wasn't a screening or cameras or interviews. It was bringing back a part of myself I'd nearly lost, returning not in triumph but in truth, with hands, heart and eyes wide open finally to all that I'd carried with me all along.